And we're back. Generations, talk about my sports generations. As always, I'm Jonathan. Seriously? Already? What did you do?
We got to redo.
No, this has to stay. This has to absolutely stay. What did you do? All I did was press record.
Yep. Well, as always, that's Steve on mute. And as always, this is Mark. Happy to be here.
You know, it wouldn't, just to give everybody the behind the scenes bit, we actually do try to do a little bit of pre-production. So can you talk? Can you?
Me?
There you go. All right. As always, I'm
Nothing's
Jonathan.
changed. Hey, I'm Steve, everybody. I don't know why I didn't come out before, but the mysteries of the internet, which are still very mysterious to me. But I'm Steve, and I hope everyone's doing really well because we got a really good show coming up.
Best intro ever, and it's only going to get better from here.
It only gets better. So, first and foremost, just to get everybody on the same page, we have been starting to port all of our content over to YouTube. So, if you prefer to see this merry band of idiots on the YouTubes, we are on the YouTubes. And you can find all of Steve's awesome hot takes because we are starting to break those in and make some shorts for you. And then we have our long form content, which you can always find on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And then we're also breaking those up because, some of us don't have an attention span of 55 minutes. So we've got 5 minute and 9 minute kind of episodes for you. So we're breaking it all down. And the other beauty of it is we've actually got 4 years of this lunacy that we've been creating. And Mark has been joining us really for the last, 6 months or so, you say?
Not even. I think like 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get to hear just Steve and I yelling at each other, me being apoplectic, Steve saying crazy stuff. And then, Mark becomes the great mediator between all of it. But we're on the YouTube. So on the YouTubes, as everyone says, please like, please subscribe, helps out the channel. And we're just having a grand old time. And the person who just commented to today that couldn't believe that I was old enough to actually know and watch Ken Stabler play, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Because, brown don't frown. That's what I'm saying.
Jonathan, who did you pay, or what burner account did you use for that?
I'm telling you, it's totally legit. And maybe it's a bot, who knows, but appreciate it. If it's a bot, appreciate it anyway. So it's pretty good stuff. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment, and if you are totally offended by anything that we say, you're probably not listening to us in the right way because this is just, we're having fun. Steve says crazy stuff. He believes crazy stuff. It's okay. I'll yell at him. Mark will try to mediate. It works. I don't know why. It just does. So don't be offended, but please interact because it's fun and we're just goofing around. Any other words of wisdom to our listeners, Mark, since you're our new guy who's joined us the last few months?
You're asking me for wisdom? I have no wisdom. How could you think I have wisdom? I'm ready to
See?
jump into our topic.
And Steve, anything you want to say to our listeners before we go?
No, except this is the start of March Madness, and I'm up in Tahoe watching the games. We're actually watching a lot of games, and it's there's a reason why we're here, and the reason why we're here is sports is fun, and sports brings out the best and worst in people. It's great to see the emotions, it's great to see the drama, and we like talking about it. So check it out, man. That's all I got to say. So let's roll with the continuation of last week, which is your 64 folks, right, Jonathan?
That's right. So this is part two. So if you're curious of what we did in part one, yelling at each other as far as seeding, we took the real 68 NCAA men's teams and the real bracket, and then we named 68 people, sports people, and tried to kind of seed them based on how influential they were in their respective sport, to society, whatever the criteria may have been. We were a little loose with a lot of it, and that's okay. And it's something to talk about, something to argue about, but we did it. And we didn't quite get all the way through, so we actually each had 5 players or 5 people rather, that we were able to bring in. We also had a couple of vetoes. So listen to the episode because I play a pretty good, prank that Mark kind of gets a little in advance. He figures me out. So go listen to that last episode. But that's part one. This is part two. So we're actually going to go through all of the players, all of the seeds, and then which team actually represents them. And we've actually had some games that have already been played. So you'll actually get to see some of those players that have advanced. And then Mark and Steve will make some, basic commentary about some of these players. And if there's anything related to the team itself, that'd be great too. So sounds like a thumbs up, everybody.
Yeah,
Let's do
definitely.
it.
Although I already feel bad because we left Jerry West off. I mean, he's the logo of the NBA. In addition to being a phenomenal player, and in addition to really being brain trust between a lot of great teams, including
Yeah.
Jonathan's Dubs. So, but I think that's one of those things you can't go back. We don't allow second
Well,
chances on this show. So no
we
Jerry
could.
West.
I think we could. We could remove Will Clark and put Jerry West on. I think that
Okay,
would
But you
you
work out
could,
can.
pretty well.
but Will lost in the first. He's already out. He already got bounced. So then Jerry West would get
I'm
bounced.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
Okay.
but at least he made the dance. At least he was dancing.
So if if you're watching us on video, then you can actually see, and you'll hear Steve say it a lot, but yes, Mark and I went to business school. We're nerds when it comes to this kind of stuff. This is in Excel. So there's actually an Excel sheet that I created of the bracket. So as an example, if you look at the very top, if you're watching on video, it shows the East. And the very top shows ranked number one. The number one team all around was Duke, and they played number 16 Siena. Number one Duke was represented or is represented by, you can't go against this guy because he's the greatest of all time, the number one overall seed in both our bracket and Duke was number one. So Muhammad Ali. Any extra thoughts you want to add there, Steve? I mean, I remember Ali and I remember the comebacks, but I wasn't old enough to watch him in the prime of his career.
First time I saw Ali was when and back then, fights were not televised for the longest time. And it wasn't until, I mean, I don't believe the Sonny Liston fights were televised, certainly not nationally. And I remember when he beat a guy named Zora Foley. And afterwards, and I knew who he was, but not that well. And afterwards, he took the mic and did the I'm the greatest thing. And it was really, in your face. And a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, a lot of parents of friends of mine did not like him at all. And I just remember him back then. And it wasn't until he actually went to prison for 3 years, and there's a crazy story behind that. So he went to prison for not participating in the draft, and he said he was a conscientious objector, and that got shot down. And after serving 3 years in federal prison, the United States Supreme Court overturned his conviction, and it did it. There's a book on how the court works, and one of the justices' clerks actually read like the autobiography of Malcolm X, and somehow was moved by this. Anyway, so he won his case, he got out, and then he had two fights. This is 1971. He had Jerry Quarry, who was a guy from Southern California, Oscar Bonavena from Argentina, and then it was 1971 Ollie Frazier, which really at the time was the biggest sporting event of all time, and that's what got the ball rolling on pay-per-view and stuff like that. So our closed circuit, it was very very exciting. So yeah, I remember Ali, and he was one of these guys that the longer he stuck around, the more people appreciated him.
And Mark, I'm assuming your memories of Ali are well after he's done fighting, yeah?
That's a great setup because my biggest memory of Muhammad Ali is when I met him in his later years. I was in high school. It actually happened to be on my birthday. He came to visit our high school. So I will find that picture because I have a picture with him. And either at the end of this episode or next episode, I can share that.
That sounds great.
What was it like meeting the greatest of all time?
It was awesome. First, he was surrounded by a ton of state troopers, but somehow I got through. I said, "Oh, it's my birthday. I want to meet him," and they let me. And he sized me up, so I was a big guy because I'm pretty tall, if people can't tell. And he stood there, took a picture with me, which was awesome. I'll never forget it. It was so great that my family turned it into a mouse pad photo. So I had a mouse pad
Wow.
with my picture with Muhammad Ali. Years later, I
So,
found a picture of Muhammad Ali with my great grandfather, who was a boxer as well, and so that was pretty cool to see a young uh, Cassius Clay with my great grandfather.
It's
wow.
really cool.
And so what were his
Yeah.
faculties like when you met him? Was he still kind of in pretty good shape or was he already on
No,
the decline?
he was on the decline. He stood there and he cracked like a little joke with me, but it was hard, but he was really generous and took a picture, and I'll never forget it.
All right. So Muhammad Ali, represented by Duke. Duke was number one. Duke already played. They played number 16, Siena. Number 16, Siena was represented, or basically the player that represents Siena was Michael Phelps. And this was a mark pick. He really wanted to get Phelps in there. We had a couple other Olympians, but he felt pretty strongly, so he drafted Phelps to be into the tournament. But Phelps is downed in the first round by Ali. But anything you want to add on Phelps since he was your guy that you brought in?
Yeah, it's just criminal to put Michael Phelps as Sienna as a 16 seed against the number one seed in the tournament, and to pit Muhammad Ali and Michael Phelps against each other. I feel like there's some other easier matchups that we're going to go through. So that's a tough one, but sometimes in a tournament, you don't get the luck of the draw, and this was the case today.
So then the 8-9 in the East was Ohio State and TCU. That game actually already has played, but Ohio State was Mike Tyson. That was another mark pick. And Bo Jackson was number 9. So Mike Tyson, Ohio State, they went down, I guess it was yesterday. But any words on Mike Tyson memories there, Mark?
This would have been cool to see Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali in the next round playing each other. That
That's
would have
why it
just
was
been
set up.
fun.
It's kind of set up that way on purpose to hopefully make it happen, but it
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. Uh, yeah, first I remember Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Can't forget about that. What else? Obviously I remember seeing a bunch of his fights when I was really young, and just how powerful and terrifying he was and electric in the ring. And um, interesting to see his career really evolve and get into entertainment between having a show on TV about his love of pigeons and then obviously his great performance in The Hangover. Yeah, it's a pretty yeah interesting arc for him. Yeah, obviously he had some tough times as well, and to see it really come around is notable.
All right, Steve, this is the one of those moments that everybody remembers exactly where they were and what they were doing. Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas, Japan. Where were you?
I wasn't in Japan, so I didn't see it personally. I remember, everyone thought he was just another tomato can. Buster Douglas was actually a really good college basketball player, of all things. Uh, but yeah, it was one of these things that I've read a lot about that, and it's fascinating the behind the scenes stuff, which whether it's true or not is another story. But it's fascinating. I mean, they Don King was full of shenanigans and trying to say that the ref missed the count, et cetera, et cetera. But it was a brutal match, and Buster Douglas, who did not make our 64 and probably didn't influence very many people aside from that, it's one of these classic stories of he had his night and it was never the same. He was a champ and he gained a bunch of weight and got pounded his next couple fights and retired early. But yeah, so I just remember being as stunned as everybody else. I mean, and bringing it back to actual hoops, I mean, Muhammad Ali almost lost to Michael Phelps. I mean, Duke was tied with just a couple minutes to go, so there are not many 116 upsets I think in the history of the tournament, but it almost happened. And I will say that the Buster Douglas knockout of Mike Tyson uh, is widely considered probably the greatest boxing upset in history.
One of those things where upsets in other sports, especially team sports, right? There are different factors that can be brought into play, right? There's a lot more variability. The weather, a ball pops out, whether you drop it in football or baseball, or a shot rims out that looks great and it didn't quite go in. So there's all these other things going on. But in boxing, there's not a whole lot of, it's not like you can hide. And it's not like, your preparation is whatever your preparation is, and wherever you're in, it is the mano a mano thing. So when you have people that are significantly more skilled or better or stronger or whatever it might be, that plays out in boxing like the favorite usually wins. And this was just Buster Douglas turned whatever he had, focus and everything else, and he just outboxed Mike Tyson. I was at my friend's house, family friend, and there's three brothers, and they were like my second family, and they had satellite, and we watched that, and it was mind blowing to see it and to watch it live. And what Buster Douglas did, it was just incredible. It was unbelievable. I was never really a Tyson fan, but what Douglas did was just incredible. And he goes down in the tournament to Bo Jackson. So what are your thoughts? What are your memories of Bo Jackson there, Steve?
I mean, I remember when he came to, I mean, I remember it was one of those Al Davis things where, they magically got him on the Raiders. He wasn't going to play football. He got in some beef with Tampa Bay and chose to play baseball. He's one of those guys that he could do either. And he was a really good baseball player. And I remember some of the signature things. I remember him, snapping the bat over his knee when he struck out. And I remember some of his throws. I remember a catch where he kind of climbed the wall like a cat afterwards. But my main memory is he comes on the Raiders, and the Raiders were good back then. And they had Marcus Allen, they had a lot of good players. And when you read the quotes of the players in the paper afterwards about, this Bo kid, Howie Long, this guy was just saying like, man, this guy's lightning in a bottle. We've never seen anything like it. And then, his NFL career is going to be just phenomenal before he got injured. And I think like most people, I remember the game against Seattle where he ran over Brian Bosworth and he kept running in the tunnel. Just he was just he had that thing even on the pro level. It sometimes seemed like a man among boys, and it's pretty amazing. So my memories of Bo are just probably the greatest two sport player ever.
Which poster did you have growing up of Bo, Mark? Any?
Posters. But I played a lot of Tecmo Bowl with Bo Jackson. So he was amazing in the game, amazing to watch in real life. But that was about it.
So his 91-yard run against the Bengals in the regular season, not in the playoff game in which he gets injured. He had a 91-yard touchdown in the regular season, and they made a poster of it. And at the bottom, it's a picture of Bo Jackson, and there's all these stills of him on the bottom, through the whole bottom of the poster of him running. And underneath it, it says, "Go Bo, go Bo, go Bo, go Bo, go Bo." And then the big picture in the background is Bo Jackson standing there with his finger guns, because after he scored the touchdown, he turns around and he finger guns every single one of the defenders that he jukes. And so it's him with his finger guns, and it's like, "Go Bo, go Bo, go Bo." And I think it might even said at the very end, "Gone." And so I have that poster still somewhere that I will fish out and probably actually frame it or something, because
Yeah, that's
that's one
cool.
of my favorite posters and one of my favorite memories.
Yeah,
So
that's really cool.
here's the East. We've got St. John's is represented by Ray Leonard. We've got Northern Iowa that's represented by LT Lawrence Taylor. He's a number 12. We've got Kansas represented by Barry Bonds. We've got Cal Baptist number 13 is Bonnie Blair. And then we've got Louisville versus South Florida, which is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar against Bruce Jenner. And that has already been adjudicated. So Louisville, the 5 seed, this says 5, but actually I think they're 6. We will fix that. See, you find these errors. They're number 6 seed, Louisville, Kareem advanced. And then the 3 versus 14 was Wilt Chamberlain against John Carlos. John Carlos, the Olympian, was North Dakota State. and Michigan State has already advanced. So, this is the time of Izzo. I think there's some axiom. Izzo has to make the Elite Eight. I think there's some contractual thing in the NCAA. Then you have number 7 against number 10. That's UCLA against UCF. So you have Arthur Ashe against Gordie Howe. That was Steve's pick. And then the 2 versus 15 in the East was UConn versus Furman. And that's Willie Mays against Brandy Chastain, of course, the women's national soccer team. Steve, any of these folks you want to, I mean, Kareem's already made it to the second round. I mean, you're the man from LA. You remember Kareem coming to LA, so tell us some stuff about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem, had a lot of issues socially. I mean, being gigantic and being black and being from the East Coast. So he had a love-hate thing going with LA. And, as a collegiate, he was, obviously dominant. But my thing about Kareem that I remember, and there are very few people, very few friends of mine who really, he was like their favorite guy. He was just he was too methodical, too mechanical. He's obviously too good. We rooted for him, but no one really liked him. But then he had a fire in his house, and he had this incredible LP collection. He was a real jazz aficionado, and it all burnt down. He lost all his records. And it's one of those things where people of LA, they said they'd stop on the street and give him records, and people just began. This is way before GoFundMe. This was way before any of this stuff. But it touched a nerve in LA that he was just this guy. He was this guy who you could just picture him at his home, playing some Miles or Thelonious Monk after a game and chilling out, and it made him more human. And that's when people began to like him a little more. But Kareem's one of these guys now. I mean, he's very likable. He's obviously been, in my opinion, smart off the charts, very articulate, knowledgeable, speaks very thoughtfully about a number of issues. But it seems like now he's got a voice in the last 5 years they didn't have for the longest time. And I think he was bitter. He didn't get a job in the NBA because none of the GMs, no one really liked him, and no one really wanted to be around him. So I just remember the house fire and the record collection and people trying to replace it. It just kind of made him feel a little more human.
So he's going up against number 3 Michigan State. You got Louisville number 6 as represented by Kareem, and Michigan State number 3, the precursor to Kareem, both in LA and preeminent center in the NBA, Wilt Chamberlain. You've told us a lot about Wilt, but tell us about, Wilt and Kareem. Like, there's a lot that's been documented between the two of them over the years, and
Well,
kind of what you're saying.
I mean, Kareem, obviously did not have any role models because it just doesn't work that way. But Will was one of them. But the same thing with being a role model is, there was a real healthy competition. And, Will, anytime he stepped on the court, I'm sure he felt like he was the best guy. And so this young guy from, UCLA was not going to do anything to him, even though, Will couldn't stop the skyhook. No one could stop the skyhooks. Skyhooks didn't get blocked. Some of Kareem's other stuff would get blocked, but not the skyhook. So Wilt, they had a, I mean, I'm sure they had a very interesting relationship on a lot of different levels. And stuff I've read have said that, Wilt and Russell and these guys really have a hard time connecting because they're just so different, just size wise and everything else wise. So there's a very small fraternity of, phenomenally gifted NBA centers that Wilt Russell and Kareem belonged to. And so they had some grudging respect for each other, but and I think I'm not sure Wilt really mentored him in any meaningful way, but they ran in the same circles and they had the same issues. So that's a great matchup, Wilt and Kareem.
This is the East, Mark, and just how it worked out. A lot of these folks, most of them, their prime was not during when you were really watching sports. So, I mean, out of the folks in the East, what do you remember? Who do you remember? Who did you like?
Have advanced or just anyone still in the tournament?
Anyone still or advanced, either way, that way, but here in the East?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, Lawrence Taylor, I watched a lot as a kid, and so, he was really it just seemed faster than everybody else on the field, and just hitting harder than anyone else on the field, at least to a young kid, he did. Um, and just also like I feel like really advancing what the position, the linebacker position was. And then obviously Barry Bonds, I watched a lot, and watched him when he was skinny Barry Bonds on the Pirates to then the Giants version of Barry Bonds, and uh, you know, while the how his career ended, it was still a lot of fun to watch it. It was still a lot of fun and still amazing to see the numbers he put up. And I don't mean just home runs. I mean just hits, walks, and his ability to just put the bat on the ball. You can, no matter what you do to your body, putting a bat to a ball doesn't get easier. Just that alone, and so his ability is. I feel like it doesn't take anything away from his ability, and he was still so much fun to watch. So I remember them obviously very well. I was old enough, but Wilt obviously is back in the news recently as Bam Adebayo had an 83-point game. That was a little surprising. I wouldn't say he would have been the guy I would have picked to break Kobe's number. But it did raise the question, can in today's NBA, can or will we see a guy hit 100 points? Um, I didn't think that would be possible, but given what happened the other day, I still don't think it's possible, but I'll give a little more, like a slightly higher percentage. So from like 5% or 2% now to maybe 10 or 15% chance of that happening. So it's cool to think about, and like who in the NBA could do that and against what team could that happen. So it was interesting just to think about Wilt. And also how I don't believe there's any film on that game, right? Like the only record of that game is just the picture of him holding up 100. And
And the box
so,
score.
yeah, the box score. And so, like, now, just think how much that game, if that game happened now, if there's a 100-point game now, it'd be amazing to watch and then rewatch it. And also the fact that, like, you know, you'll get push notifications or someone will text you being like, so and so is getting close to 100, and everyone will just jump to watch that game or find a way to watch it. I hope that whoever's broadcasting basketball that night will just break in live to that game, or ESPN also breaking live into that game just to like show it so that anyone can see it as it's happening, because you don't get a lot of those moments, and that would definitely be one to really share together.
Well, it's an interesting thought. And so I think to get to 100, it's kind of like batting 400. So the guys that have flirted with batting 400 over the last, 30 years, they all had one fundamental flaw in their game, which is they didn't walk enough. If you look at all the guys previously that batted 400, they're guys that walked a ton. So if you look at Ted Williams as an example, he's considered, right, the greatest hitter ever. He never had 200 hits in a season. That's not a knock on him that he can't get to 200. He didn't get 200 hits in a season because he walked a ton because his eye
Yeah,
was so good. And so when your eye is that good, I think your chances of hitting 400 are better. If you're Tony Gwynn, he's putting the ball in play in too much. And so that leads
yeah,
to too much variables and it's harder to do. I think in basketball, the key to Bam Adebayo's this last go around is he shot 43 free throws. So you're
yeah,
scoring points when the clock is not running. And I think that's the key is being able to score when the clock's not running. That's a big advantage. So the thought that somebody's going to just go up and jack a bunch of threes and get 100, I don't think will
no,
happen because they don't typically get fouled. But if you have that mixture of inside out, then maybe you can do it.
I
Steve, what
agree.
do you
Will's
think?
Also, oh yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Steve.
Will
sorry.
was 28
Good.
for 32 in his day. That, I mean, he was, obviously a really one of the worst free throw shooters in NBA history. But on that night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, 28 to 32.
Yeah, and that's why today's NBA, there are a few reasons why I think it could happen. It's not just the speed of the game, and it's not just people taking just chucking threes all game. It's the fact that players are more versatile now than ever before. You have guys who are big, who can shoot threes, they can put the ball on the floor, they can get fouled, and they can shoot free throws. In the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you didn't have that. You had big guys who can get fouled, and then maybe they'll make the fouls shots. You have guys who will hit threes, but back then the pace of the game and the analytics were not saying, "Hey, chuck up a bunch of threes." So now you have guys who can do different positions and really do them well and have the components of hitting threes, doing it fast, putting the ball on the floor, getting fouled, hitting free throws. And so they're just more well rounded. And that I think raises the chance as well. So I don't believe it's just the speed of the game. I think it's the composition of the players today versus in the past.
So now, for those that are watching us on video, you will see the South bracket. And so just like with all the others, we seeded all 1 through 16, the real teams with the people. So in this particular bracket, you have the number 1 seed of Florida playing number 16 Prairie View, which I believe is today. So you have number 1 being represented by Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan goes to Florida, maybe a little bit of irony there. And then number 16 is being represented by Rebecca Brunson. So that was one of my ads in our kind of draft at the end. Rebecca Brunson, for those who don't know, she has the most rings in WNBA history with 5. She's the all-time leading rebounder. And I was supposed to look this up and confirm. She's either the number 2 or the number 3 all-time leading scorer in WNBA history as well. But she's a number 16 Prairie View A&M. The 8-9 seed was Clemson, or is Clemson against Iowa. Number 8 is Diana Taurasi for Clemson. And then number 9 is Shaquille O'Neal for Iowa. And then here's finally some of the games that actually have been played so far. So you've got
Actually, can
Vanderbilt.
I give you? I'll give you an update that Iowa just won. So Iowa beat
Uh-oh.
Clemson.
Iowa just beat Clemson. We got instant update. So there you go. Boom. Iowa, Shaquille O'Neal advances over Diana Taurasi, number 8 Clemson. So we have an upset. Uh-oh. Steve's shaking his head. What do you got to say?
I've got mixed feelings because I actually bet on Iowa, so I'm glad Iowa won. But Diana Taurasi is so much more influential than Shaq. It's not even funny. So and I think it's fitting. I'm glad that Diana's in there and Miss Brunson, who I was going to look up but still don't know, but because I guess yesterday or today, the WNBA reached a collective bargaining agreement because those women just weren't getting paid. And I mean, I get the deal. I mean, I get, Caitlin Clark should not get as much as LeBron, whatever. I get that, because the NBA has so much more viewers and so much more sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera. But they were paying the women peanuts, and it's a problem in society, the pay differential, and it's really a problem in sports. So I don't know the fine details of all the stuff, but I did read that they reached an agreement, and at least the superstars will be paid very well, and I think even the average players will be getting a good salary because up until now they were not getting 80% of the people who played in the women's league, we're not fat cats. We're not making a lot of money. So I'm glad that Ms. Brunson and Diana paved the way for fairness.
Yeah,
There you go.
great. It's the right
So we
moving in the
got,
right direction.
yeah.
A lot of work to go, but moving in the right direction.
And now you've got the number 5 seed is Vanderbilt and the number 12 seed is McNeese. And so the number 5 seed was or is represented by Billie Jean King, and number 12 was Joe Montana. And Joe Montana has gone down. Vandy beat 1, and so Billie Jean King moves on to round 2. And then there was a guy that we kind of neglected or forgot or didn't make it. And so then we rectified that. I actually, for those that did already listen to the last episode, with my last kind of write in pick, I said Dick Allen. But I've since corrected that and we changed Dick Allen to Ichiro. So Ichiro is the other guy to win Rookie of the Year and have 200 hits in his first season. Of course, he's a rookie. Dick Allen and Ichiro, the only two in MLB history. And of course, you might be able to say Ichiro's the all-time hit king when you count all of his hits in the Japanese League and in Major League Baseball. So, guys, just super incredible. So we did able to get Ichiro in there. He's a number 4 Nebraska, and Nebraska number 4 beat number 13 Troy, which was represented by Jerry Rice, which actually isn't too far off of like where Jerry Rice actually went to college. But Ichiro advances, so now you've got the number 5 seed of Billie Jean King at Vanderbilt and number 4 seed Ichiro with Nebraska. So, what are your thoughts on Ichiro there, Steve? I saw you shaking your head positively
Well,
in the
I
in
think
the
he and Billie
affirmative.
Jean have a lot in common because I mean Billie Jean basically opened up tennis for women, and it made it huge. Once again, from Long Beach Poly, but Ichiro kind of did the same thing in the sense that he busted the myth that baseball is just a game played by folks in the States, and everyone else who plays it, whether it's Cuba or Mexico or wherever, is not as good. And Ichiro came over from Japan, and there was always this kind of scuttlebutt myth, whatever you want to call it, with a, I'm sure a tinge of xenophobia or racism in there that the Japan League wasn't that good and Sadaro was not Babe Ruth, blah blah blah. Nitro came in and just I mean for a number of years he was the best player in baseball. He did everything well. He ran well, he threw well, he hit fantastically. And I remember reading an article. One of his teammates said, "Yeah, if Ichiro wanted to hit 45 to 50 home runs a year, no problem, but he'd knock 25 points off his batting average, and he didn't want to do that. He was a real true team player, seemingly." And I realize that a lot of what I get is from reading things that may or may not be accurate, but he seemed like a gentleman. He seemed all the stories about him from other players are all very positive. You really don't read anything negative about the guy, and he just sounds like a good guy. So I'm not as huge an Ichiro fan as you are, Jonathan, but I really respect him and trailblazing. He paved the way for Nomo. He paved the way for Shoei. He paved the way for all the players from Asia that are coming over. And judging by the World Baseball Classic, there are a lot of guys in Japan who can play baseball really really well.
So, Mark, Ichiro was in the West, but he was in the AL. You're a Yankee fan. I mean, you got any good Ichiro in Yankee Stadium stories?
I do not. But I agree with everything Steve said. Uh, I love this matchup now in the next round of Ichiro and Billie Jean King. Kind of want to see them both advance. So it's a fun one. But no, I loved how Ichiro played. I loved how he would, basically hit the ball as he's like out of the box. He's um, and he also had just an arm, from the outfield. So he just played the game the right way. Seemed like a really great teammate, as Steve said. And so, how could you not like him, even if you were rooting against the team? He's just somebody who you wanted to root for.
Too
I
bad one of
just
them
feel
couldn't play
bad.
Shaq. I mean, that's just criminal. I mean, those two, neither one of those two, both those two deserve to advance on, whereas Shaq should is lucky he's even on our list.
Hey, it's all the matchup, right? I'm pretty sure you gave Shaq the 9. It's just how it worked out. Like it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
But I look at Seattle and I think of Seattle fan, and I mean I guess I don't need to have too much pity for them. They just, got a Super Bowl win. But when you talk about Seattle Mariners and Mariner baseball fan, I mean, they've never been to the World Series. They're one of the last 2 teams that haven't made it. So they haven't even been able to taste that. They were so close this year. And think about the team that they could have had if they could figure out how to pay them all. But A-Rod, Omar, Griffey, Ichiro, Randy Johnson. I mean, that team was so stacked. And we didn't even mention Edgar Martinez. I mean, and then for a time, they had John Olerud, they had Tino Martinez. So, first base, they had some very talented first basemen. Jay Buhner was a little bit longer in the tooth by the time, Ichiro was coming around, but they just never, they've had this great collection of individual players and they were never able to harness it all together. They had the one magical season when they broke the single season wins record. What was it, 112 wins, I think? And then they don't make the World Series. So I always kind of felt a little bad for Mariner fan because, I've been to the Kingdome and I watched the game when they were making that run where they ended up losing to the Yankees, and that was so electric. That stadium was obviously terrible for baseball, but they packed that place, and Mariner fan is definitely very passionate. So being able to give them something to root for would be fun to see.
The Northwest has a checkered history, I mean, Seattle, you really did a good job detailing the Mariners' struggles throughout the years. Before the Mariners are the Pilots in the early '70s. Then you have the Supersonics, who were a really good basketball team. They won a couple titles, and they just, in the dead of night, they got whisked out of Seattle. And then you got the Seahawks, who won this year and won one other time. But yeah, Seattle. I mean, the fans in Seattle are very passionate. The Northwest is kind of starved. Portland's got the Blazers and not much else. And yeah, it's too bad. But I respect a guy like Ichiro who toiled in Seattle. I wouldn't say in anonymity, but it wasn't certainly like Shoei's doing in L.A. with 50 reporters watching every movie he makes. And he just, like Mark said, he played the game the right way, and he put it out there every day. All the things I like, in addition to just having a incredible skill level. But he was a working class dude. He showed up. He played a lot of games, got a lot of at bats, even when they weren't doing well. So yeah, I think we can go out, send some love to Seattle because they need it.
And fun
Jonathan,
fact, go ahead.
I was going to say, since you brought it up, that 1995 Mariners roster, Ichiro wasn't on it, but that was such a memorable team.
Oh yeah.
That lineup with Joey Cora, Luis Soho, you didn't mention them, but obviously Griffey, A Rod, Buhner, Martinez, uh, they were a lot of fun to watch, and like they didn't get past the ALDS, but baseball needed it that season, right? It was right after the strike, and a really memorable matchup with the Yankees in 1995, and like uh, I don't know, I'll never forget that team. Obviously, I wasn't rooting for them, but they were so much fun to watch, and it was just like it, it was. I don't know why, but those players, obviously, not all of them are Hall of Famers, but they really stuck out, and it was fortunate that baseball had them then.
Well,
And
four of them, four of them. I mean, three of them are already Hall of Famers, and one of which, I mean, depending on how his steroids gets adjudicated, he's going to
yeah,
be a Hall of Famer. And I
yep,
think Omar should be a Hall of Famer. Was Omar on the team, or was he already shipped off to Cleveland?
I think it was already at Cleveland. Yeah,
So he
pretty
got
sure.
shipped off to Cleveland already. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, but Randy
but
Johnson's
also,
already in he's in
yeah,
the Hall already.
yeah, and also, Steve, you mentioned it. Like Seattle was just this cool place in the mid '90s. Between the Mariners having this moment, the Sonics with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. Uh, you also had just like this movement happening in music around the same time. You have Frasier on TV, Starbucks, and so it's just and obviously Microsoft and Amazon coming years later, and so it's just like a pretty interesting time of like Seattle in the mid '90s, which is it's I always wondered what it would be like to live in Seattle at that time because of all these things happening in this small city in the Northwest, just tucked away.
I was in the Northwest a little
Yeah.
later than that. I was in the Northwest in the early '80s in Oregon in Eugene. But my memory of the Sonics aren't even Sean Kemp. I mean, before Sean Kemp, they were good. And what made it worse is they always beat the Lakers. The Lakers back then had a front line, funny front line: Kareem, Adrian Dantley, and Jamal Wilkes. None of them are rebounders. AD's like 6'3" and a half. Jamal weighs about 160 pounds, but they played hard. But the the Sonics were so good back then. I don't know if probably a little before your time, but they were really a solid,
DJ.
solid team. DJ, Freddie Brown, Jack Sigma, they had it all, and they were good. And I mean, I realize hindsight's 2020 or better, but taking basketball out of Seattle really was a blow. And
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know the backstory behind it at all, and I don't get it. But
It's not a
Seattle,
good,
was a
it's not a
was a
good
really
backstory.
good franchise. They were, I
Yeah.
mean, they just dominated back then. And
Yeah.
right before them, Portland dominated. So you had the Northwest kind of taking over basketball for a number of years, and that's what's
Yeah.
happening. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. I
Looks like
really hope they
Seattle's
get a
coming
team
back.
back. Yeah. I really hope they get the team back because also, even the timing of when they lost the Sonics was kind of hard because it was like Kevin Durant is right there.
Russell
And
Westbrook.
yeah, yeah, and James Harden after that,
And then
like
James Hart. Yeah.
yeah, and so like not only did you just get your team ripped away, but you were about to have these three guys together that at the time, if you remember, those three guys, it was like, whoa, wait, they just made the finals. Is this going to be the next great team and another dynasty? And you got to wonder, like, what if they stayed in Seattle? If the team stayed in Seattle and those three guys were there, would the team have been run in a way and the city really getting behind them where they could have uh, been a dynasty and Seattle get a title or more than one? So it's also they have an awesome logo, awesome colors. Not the '90s ones, but the '80s colors, the green and yellow. And so I hope it does happen where they get their team back.
So, fun fact, Seattle Pilots are the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
Remember that. So, the rest of the South bracket. Number 6, North Carolina was represented by Sandy Koufax. Number 11, VCU was Mary Lou Retton. And the upset happened. VCU Rams, A10. A10, two teams represent. Both of them won their first round game. VCU wins. Mary Lou Retton advances. Then you had number 3, Illinois against number 14, Penn. That was Jim Brown took down Andre Agassi. So the round 2 matchup is going to be Mary Lou against Jim Brown. I think that's going to be a really good kind of matchup. And then probably the biggest upset of our tournament, number 7 St. Mary's, my wife's alma mater, played number 10 Texas A&M. St. Mary's was represented by Kobe. So Kobe fan, I'm sorry, but you just got upset by USC's Cheryl Miller. So number 10 A&M moves on, Cheryl Miller, and she's going to face the number 2 seed, the number 2 seed of the whole tournament, Tiger Woods, represented by Houston. They took down Randy Johnson, who was represented by Idaho. Any quick comments on, those last few? Kobe going down, or Cheryl getting up, or Mary Lou taking down Koufax?
My only comment of the people you've mentioned, I'm just not a Tiger Woods fan, and I respect what he's brought to the game, and I mean, especially this idea that with Augusta's history, a guy like Tiger actually winning there, all these things are great about it, but I think he's just an example of I wouldn't say maybe what's wrong with our society, but all the things in sports that I like have kind of a twisted bad side to it, and Tiger seemed to got the straw on all those. So I can't root for Tiger, and you can't take away his accomplishments, but he seems like one of those guys, maybe a Tom Brady type, where you put everything, or Kobe, you put everything into your profession and you dominate it, but the rest of your life is a bit of a hot mess.
Mark, any last thoughts on the South?
I mean, he was influential. Um, yeah, no, I loved watching Tiger Woods, especially when he was first coming out, and just the energy about it, and seeing like even the sounds, like watching TV, watching golf, and seeing the sounds or hearing the sounds of just the fans get louder and louder as he became more established and just kept dominating, and the run he went on. It's kind of a shame thinking about like what would have been, or what could have been, because he definitely would have broken the record for the number of majors. Um, and I mean, his pace was, I don't remember the exact number, but he was like well on pace to really just blow that number away. And so, yeah, it's been interesting, his ups and downs, and seeing the arc and seeing some comebacks he's had, and seeing fans actually rally around him, which is pretty cool. And again, I think it's great just for the sport to just have some players to really rally around. And look, I think it's nice seeing him golf with his kid, and seeing his kid try to succeed, and like, that's nice to see. So
Well, I'll say
that's
this
all
about
I have to
Tiger.
say.
I mean, I consider myself a pretty average fan, so golf's kind of down on my list. I'd rather watch hoops or football or something. But I'll say, and even though we have two really good friends, RJ and Chris are kind of fanatic golfers and watch golf all the time. Back in the day when Tiger was in a tournament, a big tournament, I would watch. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd watch a major
hours.
that I would never watch
Yeah,
in a million years. It's like watching grass grow. But he brought an excitement, a drama to golf of all,
yeah,
of all
yeah,
sports that you couldn't imagine. And so, in his own way, he transformed the sport unbelievably to make an average guy like me actually be interested in watching it. And it was dramatic. It was fascinating. He had a flair for the dramatic, and he was just amazing. So you got to give him his props.
Well, here's the exclamation possibly. No one before and nobody since has had the situation where your betting options were Tiger or the field. You could take everybody else other than Tiger if you really wanted to bet, and that was
yeah.
actually more often than not the losing bet. But we've got 5 minutes each for West and the Midwest, so let's burn through these. So you have number one Arizona played Long Island, number 16. That game's already been played, but you had Babe Ruth. So he was, of course, a number one seed. He played Roger Federer, who was represented by Long Island. So Babe Ruth advanced. You had a big upset here, in my opinion, both in the game, but also just in the people, because I hate this guy. But you had Martina Navratilova. She was represented by number 8 Villanova, which Villanova, with just all the history of just the last 20 years, the recent history of how good they've been, heavily favored, even though they were an 8 seed against number 9 Utah State, which was represented by Pete Rose. Charlie Hustle moves on. So he's playing Babe Ruth, Arizona versus Pete Rose, Utah State. That's in the second round. Then another big upset. Larry Legend was represented by number 5 Wisconsin, and High Point out of nowhere, the number 12 seed, represented by Sue Bird. You had Bird versus Bird. How'd that work out? But Sue Bird wins as High Point. She goes on the second round. Then Shohei, he was number 4. Arkansas played number 13, Hawaii. That was Emmett Smith. So Shohei goes on. So you're going to have Shohei against Sue Bird in round 2. Then you had the number 6 BYU Cougars played Texas Longhorns number 11. So BYU was represented by Jack Nicklaus. They get taken down by Texas and OJ Simpson. So OJ goes to round 2. Then number 3, the Zags, the Bulldogs, Jackie Robinson. And then number 14, Kennesaw State was represented by Mia Hamm. Funny story. Somebody that I went to school from third grade all the way to high school. We were in gate together. She's the dean of the honors college at Kennesaw State. So kind of was rooting for them, even though I'm more of a Zags fan. But she's the dean there, so I gotta give her some props. But the Zags go on. So now you've got a round 2 matchup of OJ versus Jackie Robinson. So I think that'll be interesting. And then 2 games that haven't been played yet. You got Miami, Florida playing at number 7, playing Missouri number 10. That's Joe Lewis against Dion. And then the number 15 and number 2 versus number 2, Purdue's number 2, Queens of North Carolina is number 15. That's LeBron versus Abby Wambach. Each of you got 30 seconds. Mark, you first.
Do just one, so you can move Purdue forward.
Purdue won. So
Yeah.
LeBron takes down Abby Wambach.
Um, yeah, I don't have anything more to say other than some cool matchups for the next round. or I don't know if cool is the right word, some matchups for the next round that just fun to think about. So that's it.
Steve, you got 30 seconds.
Well, I'd like to use my 30 for the juice because I find guys like that fascinating. And I try to separate the art from the artist, whether it's Michael Jackson or whomever it is. And lately, hitting real close to home, Cesar Chavez. These guys who have made are world changers, but they have these real crazy sides. So I just like the idea of not making them someone you can't talk about. So I'm glad OJ is advancing. Very complicated, difficult dude, but not, most of us have lots of aspects to us.
Wow. And everybody knows my philosophy on this stuff. F that guy.
I know.
So, all right. The last bracket, the Midwest, the number 1 seed, Michigan, played the number 16 seed, Howard. Howard was represented by Mississippi State's finest, USA Baseball's finest, the San Francisco Giants' finest, Will the Thrill Clark. Will made it to the dance, but he was taken down by number 1 Michigan, which is also represented by Tom Bradley, former mayor of Los Angeles, former quarterback of the New England Patriots, former quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Tom Bradley wins, takes down Will the Thrill. He's going to advance. Then you have my favorite game of the whole entire tournament. You have the number 8 Georgia Bulldogs represented by Magic, and this actually worked out doubly for me. My alma mater wins. St. Louis University Billikens, number 9, the underdog, also represented by my favorite basketball player, Charles Barkley. Number 9, Charles Barkley, St. Louis University Billikens advanced, but now I don't think we've ever made the Sweet 16. I was telling Mark and Steve this. I don't even think with Larry Hughes we made the Sweet 16. Every time they've at best won one game. So we're super stoked. I don't think they're beating Michigan, but if it were to happen and we were to get a, Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas moment, I would love it. So you got Barkley going against Tom Bradley. Then the number 5, Texas Tech against number 12, Akron. So you had Serena Williams going up against Peyton Manning. Peyton goes down. Serena advances, as it should be. Here's an interesting game. We got number 4, Alabama against number 13, Hofstra.
Game's
Alabama.
over.
Uh-oh, who's won?
Dr. J.
Dr.
Alabama.
J. So Alabama advances along with Dr. J. So that's in the books. So now we've got a second round matchup, Serena against Dr. J. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Then you've
just a
got,
quick note on that, just while we're here, this will be my 30 seconds. There's a really good documentary. It's a few episodes on Prime Video about the ABA. It's cool to watch and talks obviously a lot about Dr. J, but some really cool footage, some good stories I didn't know, and definitely something to check out. It's really, really cool.
yeah, absolutely. I've seen it. It's really good. And then Tennessee, number 6, Tennessee is Bill Russell against Steve's right-in pick of Bobby Orr, represented by number 11, Miami of Ohio. Bobby Orr went down. Bill Russell advances. Then you have the number 3, Virginia Squires, represented by Wardell, Steph Curry, the number 3 seed. They took down number 14 seed Wright State, which was Mark Spitz. For those who don't know who Mark Spitz is, we are actually trending younger, which is good. Mark Spitz was Michael Phelps before Michael Phelps back in the early 70s, late 60s. But he goes down. So now you have a round 2 matchup of Bill Russell against Steph Curry, or Tennessee versus Virginia. And then number 7, Kentucky was represented by Sweetness, Walter Payton, versus number 10, Santa Clara, which was Joe Namath, the original Joe Cool, and he goes down. So Kentucky wins. Walter Payton advances. And then lastly, the great one, Wayne Gretzky, was represented by, or is represented by, Iowa State, number 2, against number 15, Tennessee State, who was Greg Louganis. So the great one advances. So now you have a round 2 of Walter Payton, Kentucky versus Wayne Gretzky and Iowa State. Steve, we got 30 seconds, and then we can wrap it up.
Only 30 seconds are that I was really impressed with the enthusiasm and passion you had for your Billikens advancing, and that's what the tournament's all about. It's fun, things happen, and I went. I wouldn't put it past them. I watched Michigan play. I was not overly impressed. I know oftentimes the first round it's tricky, but second round the Billikens could keep going. This could be their year. We all missed one of the fly guys, Larry Hughes, but maybe the Billikens will take down the Wolverines.
Well, we've got Avila. People call him Larry Blur, but as of yesterday, he's got a brand new nickname, and they're calling him Slew Alcindor. So Larry Blur, Slew Alcindor, come on, Avila. But I mean, he's not the only guy, but he's an easy guy to root for. So this is the tournament. We're going to keep updating this. We're going to have this available so you can actually look at this online and you can scream at us and tell us who we forgot or what we missed or if we made any mistakes in the seating. But we're just trying to make the tournament a little more fun. And then lastly, here were those write-ins, those other write-ins. So we had Bobby Orr. Again, we actually had the Joker became a write-in. He got moved down. We had Greg Maddox was the 16 seed. We had Rebecca Brunson, OJ Simpson, Lisa Leslie, and then Tanya Harding and Will Clark. So Tanya didn't advance, but she was a 16 seed that we created. Go listen to the first episode. It's super funny. You'll enjoy it. We'll break that up. You'll start seeing all this. Again, we're on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Last thought, Steve.
No, man, just keep watching the tournament. Listen to us or watch us if you can. And you know, constructive criticism. I'm not sure if it was Jonathan's sister who made the comment that he's too young, but it could have been. But any kind of comments like that are appreciated. We just like to get people involved and think about things other than the insanity of modern day living. So that's all I got from South Lake Tahoe. Everybody have a great weekend.
Mark, sign us out.
Just hope all the listeners know that Jonathan actually knows Tom Brady's name and purposely says Tom Bradley. Just to be clear for everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.